Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of discussion as we gather to talk about the role of government in almost everything that we do day to day. I think most Americans, as they go to work and they look at how the government's role is in their lives, they don't really give the government a lot of thought. They want to be left alone, to pay some measure of taxes, to have things that we all agree on, like schools, roads, bridges, stoplights, national defense, other things. We like to see efficient government. We like to see it small. We like to see it without waste. If there are things that other services can provide without it being done by government, we like choices. We like privatization. We like the private sector. But there are certain things, Mr. Speaker, that the government does have a role in. This was recognized by perhaps the finest American we ever produced, Abraham Lincoln, when he said, quote, "The legitimate object of government is to do for the people what needs to be done, but which they cannot, by individual effort, do at all or so well for themselves." Mr. Speaker, there are three sectors that the government does have a role, and as we as conservatives might want limited government and efficiency and lack of waste, and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would want similar things, but they might approach it a different way. We all, as Americans, have a moral obligation to protect the security of the United States of America. We've just seen that with the passage of the National Defense Authorization. But what I would like to address today is a broach in one of our pillars of national security with a proposal with our aerospace. The three areas that we must safeguard and protect is our national defense, our national intelligence, and our national aerospace. We are considering now a Air Act, H.R. 2997, which would take the Federal Aviation Administration's reauthorization, which we have to do, and it will pretty much remove federal control of air traffic controllers, and the control of our aerospace, and put it into the private industry. Many of us, in a bipartisan fashion, have grave concerns with this. I am one of them. If you look at H.R. 2997, what you'll find is that the President has diminished authority. In the 1980s, when air traffic controllers, through their unions, went on strike, and they said that we're not going to play, we're going to picket, and it put the United States at risk, Ronald Reagan warned them by saying, if you do that, you're fired. They said, oh, he's not going to do that. How is he going to control the skies? The President, acting on his constitutional responsibilities, fired them. He took control, as he should have, and air traffic controllers by the thousands were removed and others were put in their place. H.R. 2997 would remove this type of authority that the President of the United States would have. If this bill were to become law, President Reagan would not have been able to do what he did in the 1980s. It also removes Title 31 authority. What is that? Well, Title 31 authority is how we, through the appropriation process and through the power of the purse, control and oversee government so that we, the people, and their duly elected representatives, are able to control the aspects and agencies of government. Because without this powerful oversight tool, you might have bureaucracies become an entity unto themselves. And so Title I authority is vital that we have those hearings, controls, measures, and prohibitions so that even if something is decided on, money is not authorized, and therefore it gets shut down. Title 31 authority in H.R. 2997 would be removed. There's also no other oversight provisions that would be put in its place. Why? Because what it's doing is it will take the Federal Aviation Administration's air traffic control system and it will put it into the hands of a private company. Now, I'm all about privatization and business and choices, and there's a lot of things, but going back to the Lincoln quote, there are certain collective things that we cannot do as individuals and that the government has a role. If waste, inability to procure, inability to modernize, or inefficiencies were a condemnation to privatize everything, then why don't we just privatize national defense? They waste money. They have trouble procuring. They have trouble modernizing. Why don't we just turn over national defense to the private sector? We would never do such a thing because it would place all of us at risk. But yet, we're going to take the national aerospace control of the skies, and as it stacks up, and there's a lot that goes on up there, as I'll illustrate, we're going to put that into the hands of a private company. And this private company would have a board, but it will not have Title I authority oversight, and under its current form, the President will have diminished authority only in time of war to take control of the aerospace system. This is a bad idea. It also transfers all DoD intelligence agencies, Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, Homeland Security support to this private entity. Today, the FAA does a lot of things with their air traffic controllers. What do? At any given moment, and as many of you flew into Washington, D.C. to come and see your government at work, you flew on an airline. Sometimes there's delays, you get it, there's weather, there's different things. Other times, you're sitting there and it's clear as a bell and you're wondering, what is the holdup? Part of that reason, unknown to even the pilots on the tarmac, is that there are missions that our military performs. There are national intelligence missions that are being performed and surveillance missions that are being performed. There are Homeland Security and border security missions that are being performed. When they take priority, they also take priority for air traffic control and the clearances, and many times things will have to be rerouted to accommodate it. The American public, even the pilots on the planes, are none the wiser. Now, under H.R. 2997, the problem that you'll have is that all of this authority will now be coordinated with a private entity. I'll explain why this is a problem in a moment. As a conservative, I'm all about privatization where it makes sense. But when it comes to national security, as a combat infantryman, a veteran of 3 wars, someone who served my country in uniform for 21 years, we must protect this great republic. And there is a role for the United States government when it comes to our national security. When we have strayed from this and tried to privatize certain sectors, our greatest embarrassments with national intelligence have been when we have directed to private entities for that collection. Think Edward Snowden. Think leaks in government with classified information getting out. Where is that occurring? It's occurring with subcontractors and private entities who we were assured when we passed these laws, oh, they'll be under the same agencies, under the same systems, and everything will be fine. Trust us. And then we in Congress have authorized that, and then what? We sit in our hearings and our committees with our bony fingers and our red faces going, Mr. Secretary or Mr. Agency Head, how did you let this happen? All we have to do is look in the mirror. When we take these controls away on things that we must have a government role in, defense, intelligence, and aerospace, we're creating the very construct that causes these problems. Our alliances were shaken. Our country was